Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for a simple emboss resist technique featuring Picket Fence Studios Plenty of Fish. These fun rainbow cards are inspired by memories of snorkeling in the tropical seas. Of course it didn't quite look like this, but those fish were so colorful the images have stayed with me for years. This image is going to be stamped in stages, and so a stamping platform is essential. Because this large stamp is made up of a number of smaller images in order to capture the full range of the rainbow, it is best to use ink cubes rather than the standard size ink pads. Because I will be doing some stenciling, I'm working on an A2 size panel of Bristol Smooth cardstock. This cardstock really enables the ink to go on with even tone without much effort. To take advantage of the full-size image of this stamp, I have my cardstock placed away from the edges of my Misty. Sweet Petunia, the maker of Misty, has developed a sticky mat insert for these stamping platforms. The mat keeps the panel in position. There's no need to worry about losing alignment between the stamped image and the stamp. For both cards, I'm stamping with Distress Oxide inks, but for this first panel, I'm focusing more on bolder colors. If you want to know the colors that I've used for each card, those will be listed on the blog. To get a solid impression of these silhouette images, I'm applying the ink for each color twice, and I'm also using a tool to apply even pressure on the Misty. For this technique, I chose to work with Distress Oxide inks. Distress inks would work equally as well because of their long drying time. Don't have to emboss after each color has been applied, and I don't have to rush through my stamping either. This ink is slow drying. It is perfect for this technique. And now I'm applying my second coat of purple, and that completes the stamping of the entire image. Clear embossing powder is applied to the image on the panel. I like to do this over a coffee filter so that I can easily funnel that powder back into its container. To help minimize warping when heat is applied to the panel, I've let my heat tool come up to full temperature before the heat is applied, and I also apply the heat to the front and the back of the panel. For me, embossing never gets old. I am always amazed by the magical transformation. I've changed it up for the second panel, and for most of the colors I'm using softer, more pastel shades. But the process is exactly the same, ink being applied 2 times for every color and then finishing up with clear embossing. As usual, if you would like more information about any of the products that I've used to make these cards, you can find links in the description of this YouTube video, on the Picket Fence Studio blog, or my blog at bonniecarolee.com. I love how the embossing just really makes those colors pop. And this is the point where the resist technique comes into effect as I apply ink using the Slimline Ocean stencil. Both panels will be stenciled using the Slimline Ocean stencil. Because the fish are embossed, I'm able to apply the ink right over top of them. I'm continuing to work with Distress Oxide inks, and for this first panel with the more pastel shades of fish, I'm working with Tumbled Glass and Cracked Pistachio. Tumbled Glass is being applied first to the entire panel. As I work, I hold down the stencil with a long, thin piece of cardstock. It not only holds the stencil in place, but it will protect the panel from finger marks. When the panel is stenciled with the soft blue, then I move on to the Cracked Pistachio. I'm only going to be using the top portion of the stencil where the wave lines are a little bit thinner. The stencil is repositioned several times until the green has been applied to the entire panel. For the second panel, I also added in a third color, shaded lilac. The panels were set aside to dry completely before I used a microfiber cloth to buff off the ink that was sitting on top of the embossed fish. The panels were trimmed down to card front size, 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. These panels are going to be foam mounted. I'm using the foam by Picket Fence Studio that comes in a huge 50-foot roll. It is exactly 4 inches wide, perfect for card fronts. Sometimes I like to use this foam for die cutting, but it only has backing paper on the one side. So whenever I mount a panel, I retain the backing paper that comes off of the back of the foam and use it to place on top of the other side that does not have the backing paper so that I can die cut with it. And this is the voice of experience. You don't want to be die cutting unless you have backing paper on both sides of this foam. Yes, I'll try anything once, but I do learn. The foam back panels are mounted onto black cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 for a thin reveal. Then on it goes to an A2 size top folding card base that measures 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. The same colors of ink that were used in each of the cards is going to be stenciled onto another piece of cardstock to stamp the sentiments on. The sentiments from Picket Fence Studios Add Color to Your Life are perfect for these rainbow fish cards. I love black emboss sentiments, but I am not a fan of black embossing powder. I always end up with black specks everywhere. So what I like to do is to stamp with black ink. I'm using Picket Fence Studios Intense Black, and then clear emboss the sentiment. A black emboss look with none of the mess. The sentiments are trimmed down, mounted on foam, and then adhered to the center of each of the cards. Sequins and clear crystals from Under the Sea sequin mix are used to embellish the cards. The sequins are finished off with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. When the morning dew dries, it is clear, giving them a beautiful jewel-like appearance. And that wraps up this pair of cards featuring Picket Fence Studios' Plenty of Fish, all done up in rainbow style with an easy emboss resist technique. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate your visit.